right, let's talk about FHA. FHA, the Federal Housing Administration. I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again. And even I'm guilty of this one because I say it a lot of times about, oh, we're going to get an FHA loan. There is no such thing as FHA loan. FHA does not loan money. The banks still loan the money. All FHA does is ensure the bank that if that person fails, FHA will cover them. So typically, or not typically, technically, it's called an FHA insured loan. Nat City still makes the loan. All the FHA does is they tell Nat City, hey, we have done our preliminary homework on Raymond. We think he's a good guy. Why don't you loan him the money? Now, you still got to pass Nat City's stuff. And if Raymond messes up, we will cover him. So it's an FHA insured loan, still made by PNC Bank or Nat City or whoever. It's just, think of them almost like a cosigner in this scenario. They're almost like a cosigner. The biggest reason people use FHA loan is the low down payment requirement, 3.5%. That means you're borrowing 96.5% of the money. So now you say, oh, look, I can buy a $200,000 house. All I need is like $6,000. Instead of $40,000, which is what a conventional would want. So FHA allows people to get a bigger home. It allows people that may be disenfranchised, that don't have the best income, because the high loan-to-value ratio that the FHA allows. Now, because they have a high ratio, what else would FHA insured loans have? We just talked about it. PMI. Because you're getting a 96.5% loan instead of that 80. So banks can still charge PMI. They can also charge origination fees and discount points to that lender or to that borrower. FHA has several different things. FHA also has an upfront insurance premium that you pay. It's 1.75% of the loan to get it, to get the loan. So there are some added costs to an FHA, but theoretically, the total added costs are still way less than the 20% down that a conventional would require. You can't tack it on. Which ones are you talking about? Like the upfront, you cannot. You pay it at closing, and it will add on to your cost to close. Yeah, loan origination fees and discount points, I think you can add to your loan. You can roll them into your loan, but it's still a cost you're paying. Or you can pay them up front. You can also pay PMI up front too, by the way. A lot of people didn't know that. Instead of paying the other $200 a month, you might pay $3,000 at closing, and it pays the PMI forever. It's the time value of money. Some lenders will allow that, a one-time PMI fee. And it boils down to, do you want $200 today or a month, or do you want $3,000 now? So whatever that math works out, we're not going to go into the present value of money math, but that's it. So they can charge discount points in addition to loan origination fees. They can also ask for help from the other side. The seller can actually give them help. They can actually give them that 3.5%. So theoretically, FHA could have no money down. Theoretically, there's still costs involved and there's still fees, which we will cover tomorrow on how to figure all that. But they can ask for help.
So the seller can pay the 3.5% down payment?
Yes, they can give them buyer's assistance fees. Well, they get a tax credit in the form of it's money they didn't get as a capital gain. So instead of getting $100,000, for the hat, they get 96.5 because they gave 3 to the other side.
They made their deal happen.
But they made the deal happen. So yes, it is a tax deduction, so to speak, but it comes in the form of not earning 100 grand. They earned less than 100 grand. All right. Now, FHA used to have assumptive rules, meaning before 86, they were freely assumable. We just called Lydia's bank and said, hey, erase Lydia's name, put Raymond's on, and let's go. And that was fine. Then from 86 to 89, they went to this partially qualifying where I had to partially qualify to take a assumer loan. And then since 89, they're now what they call fully assumable or fully qualifying assumable loans. So you still have to qualify, which basically means eligible to get a new loan. So the assumption is not there without complete qualification. Here's the problem. Loans written in 89, 90, 6, 7, 8%. Why would you do that? If you could fully qualify, just go get a new loan at 4.5 to 5 now. Now here's the next question. Let's combine some of yesterday. Remember, we went to foreclosure. Judge said, Raymond, you don't get 18 months free. Give them the money. I said, hey, I have no money. They said, okay, we're going to exercise your mortgage, give them the collateral, so we give them the house. The bank takes the house, and before the bank leaves the court, they got their house under the arm, and they go, the first stop they stop is where? Sheriff's sale. First stop is the sheriff's sale. So the bank takes the house to the sheriff's sale, and they say, here, sheriff, we want you to sell our house. The house either goes to sheriff's sale and sells, but if it doesn't, the sheriff calls the lender and says, hey, man, your house didn't sell, come and get it. So the lender comes back to the sheriff, picks up their house under their arm, walks to the bank, and before they walk into the bank, they stop and they make a decision. They said, we foreclosed upon Raymond. He had an FHA insured loan. We are going to take advantage of that, and we're going to call FHA and say, hey, the guy that you backed messed up. We want you, we are now exercising our insurance. We want you to give us our money because you said he was a good guy. So the FHA gives the bank their money and makes the bank whole. Well, then the bank says, well, you know what? You paid for this house. Here, it's now yours. And the FHA says, okay, let's sell it. That's called a HUD home. That's where HUD homes come from. A HUD home is a home that the previous owner defaulted on that was insured by FHA. Because when FHA made the bank whole, the bank gave the FHA the house. And that they said, okay, well, let's hire a realtor and we'll put it out, and that's a HUD home. Now, if the bank stood at the front door and went, ooh, this was one of our loans we made, it's now our problem, it becomes what we call an REO home. I don't think it's in the book. It's called a bank-owned, is what most people call it. It's called REO, real estate owned. That's where the term REO home. That means it's the bank's home. Now they hire a realtor and they put it on the market as a bank-owned home. So that when you see two homes sitting beside each other and you see one that's listed as a bank-owned home and that one's a HUD home, you know exactly that the HUD home came from a guy that defaulted from an FHA loan. This guy came from defaulted on probably a non-FHA loan. Could have been a conventional, could have been something else, but it was the bank's problem. So that's the virtually only difference between the two. Who backed Raymond when he went to foreclosure process? If the bank made that loan, it's an REO home. If the FHA insured Raymond, it becomes a HUD home. Question?
I was just wondering if they have to be on the market, like visible,
Do they have to be on the market? They have to be. Somebody has to know they're available. Banks can't sell their own properties.
Like if you walk up to a property that's got the white sticker on the door and it looks like it's...
So if you see the house is a HUD home, you cannot call FHA and buy the home from them. Banks are the only entity in the world that can't sell their own home. Thank the NAR for that, because if they did,
Prompt someone to market it?
yes, they have a, HUD is actually going through the bid cycle right now. The bid cycle is open right now for any real estate broker, which would be me, that can put a bid into HUD and say, hey, I'll list your HUD homes, but here's what I charge. And then I get every HUD home in Indiana. There was a guy years ago, Caldwell Banker, I'm trying to remember his name. He got like 0.5% on every HUD home that's sold in Indiana because he was the listing agent for HUD. Since then, they've divided Indiana up into 3 sections. You got the northern, the central, and the southern. And there's a broker for each one. But it's like any government contract. It comes up for renewal. People put in and say, here's what I'll bid. And if you are the lowest bidder, then you win and you get to be the listing broker for HUD for 2 years. But you have to do all the work. You have to go out and get the pictures, put the lockbox on, market it, put it in the MLS, do all that.
Is that why it's hard to find them on the MLS?
Well, it's not hard to find them on the MLS because once they get to the MLS, the hard part's done. The time frame for a house for Raymond to go to foreclosure till you see it on the MLS in today's market could be 3 to 5 years. And that's the biggest problem people see, is they see a home that's vacant, and they go, hey, that home's vacant. How do I get information about it? Don't know. Not until, because it's probably in that process somewhere, and we don't know where that process is. Could be Raymond has court tomorrow. Could be Raymond had court 2 years ago, and it's going to the sheriff's sale. Could be that it's already went to the sheriff's sale, made it to the bank, and the bank is still sitting on the executive's desk, and he just hadn't signed off on it. That's the biggest problem. Once it gets to the MLS, they're easy to find because that means they've already got to the process of hiring the agent, and the agent's put it on the MLS. It's from the day that Raymond goes to court to the day it hits the MLS, that's the hard part.
So the person who lists them, do they generally have an office and advertise that they sell those HUD homes?
Oh, yeah, everybody knows who they are.
Who are they?
Well, like for bank-owned homes here in Indianapolis is Scott Wynkoop. W-Y-N-K-O-O-P. Everybody knows Scott Wynkoop's been doing bank homes for 20 years. He's like the largest, one of the largest in the country that does that. Because he gets contracts with banks, and then once he got one with one bank, he goes to another bank and said, hey, I do their bank, and I do that. So he knows up to maybe 30 days in advance because they'll call him and say, hey, we've got this one. We're getting ready to put it on the market. Do we need any repairs? Do we need this? Can you start the marketing process? But that house could have went to foreclosure 3 years ago.
This poses a question. Is that why in certain foreclosures they offer you money to move quicker?
No, certain foreclosures offer you money. It's called cash for keys. Because here's the problem. If Raymond goes to foreclosure and they say you owe the house, it's going to sheriff's sale. I'm like, hey, fungool, I ain't moving out. What are you going to do? You going to send Guido over to throw me out? So what the bank will do is they'll hire an agent like Raymond, and I'll go to John. Look, John, you already lost the house, so here's the deal. If you move out peacefully and don't destroy the house, leave it in good condition, we'll give you $500 or $1,000 the day you hand me the keys. If you don't want to go that route, we'll go back to court, we'll call the cops, we'll get the constable out here, we're going to do all that, throw you out, and maybe arrest you and do all that. But that costs us money, so we'd rather just give you the cash and let you walk peacefully. That's a very common thing. It's called cash for keys. Is to get that person out. Because in Indiana, if that person doesn't belong there, we can't use self-help. You can't go in and grab them by the shirt and throw them out the door. You still have to go through the eviction process. That costs money. So a lot of times banks will say it's cheaper for us to give you $500 cash. Once you move out, you hand our realtor the key. The realtor inspects the property, sends us back something saying, hey, yeah, here's all the pictures. It's nice and neat. They swept, they cleaned, they didn't do any damage. Boom, you get a check for $500. Now you got money for deposit on your apartment or whatever. It's called the Cash for Keys program. It's out there. So that's how a HUD home comes about. And so now you can literally tell when you see the HUD home in the sticker and it's for sale, oh, that guy that defaulted was an FHA loan. If it's a bank-owned home like Wine Coop gets, that was probably not, well, it's not probably, it wasn't a HUD home or wasn't an FHA insured loan. Let's change the audio.